Chris in Oakland, California. Hey, Chris, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, boy, Richard was really close there, wasn't he? I was rooting for him. He was right on the verge of rational credibility there, and he just had to go with the false equivalency. He just couldn't resist.
Well, by the way, I'm not sure that Maxine Waters, if you're still listening, I tried to Google this during the break, and I couldn't find any place where Maxine Waters walked back her. Actually, I couldn't even find her comment. I found all kinds of mostly right-wing sites hyperventilating that Maxine Waters was encouraging people to yell at people in restaurants or something. I couldn't find her quote, and I couldn't find where she walked it back. So I don't know.
It's different than running him over with cars and shooting him.
Yeah, there's a substantial difference. Yes. Anyhow, what's up, Chris?
So anyway, I know you're a very learned man, and I know you have spoken about medical issues in the past, and I wanted to get your opinion on something. There are certain sort of diseases or afflictions. Once we get them, we're inoculated from them, and then others that once we get them, we're more susceptible. Going forward, when this kabuki cabal that's going on right now ultimately fails, and I believe it will, I think liberty and freedom are too ingrained in our DNA, and our free press is too strong, and our social media for him not to fail. But going forward, do you think after this we will learn a lesson? We will be more inoculated against the next Donald Trump type character that comes along, or do you think that we'll be more susceptible?
I think it'll be a little bit of both, but the lens through which I view this stuff, Chris, is that of cults, and I do that because having lived in Germany for a year, and my mentor Gottfried Müller, who passed away at the age of 92 about half a decade, about maybe 6-8 years ago. Was in Hitler's army. He parachuted early in the war, parachuted into what was then part of Iran. It was the Kurdistan part of Iran, to help the Kurds. He spoke their language, to help the Kurds get the oil for Hitler. And he was immediately arrested by the British and the Iranians and held in a prison cell until the end of the war, for which he says, "Thank God, I never killed anybody." He told me stories about what it was like being a young man in Hitler's Germany. A number of the people who worked with the organization, the Salem International Organization at that time, they've all passed away now. Horst von Heyer was one of them. He was part of the Hitler Youth. And, we had long conversations. Horst went with me into Uganda. His assistant was eaten by a crocodile in South Africa. We worked together in Bogota, Colombia. And what I got from these guys was that it was a cult, that Hitler had created a cult, not just a cult of personality, but a religious cult, basically. This idea of the supremacy of the Aryan race, so it was a white nationalist cult, and the confluence of Christianity with it. There had been this Archbishop Muller, who was appointed by the state, in the mid-30s. When basically all the other churches were shut down. And the thing that woke people up from that cult was having the curtain ripped back after World War II and seeing the death camps and seeing the horrors and seeing the devastation of their country. And
when they made the private citizens come come through and look.
Right, and it shocked them out of their cult following. And the same thing with Japan. I have a good friend who's Japanese. Now, he's not as old as Herr Mueller was. He was born like I was I was born in 51. I think he was born in 53. But he's heard the stories, and the kamikaze pilots to die for the emperor, who was the great grandson of the creator of the earth itself, the sun god, was the highest thing that you could do. And that cult got shattered when the Japanese were defeated in war. So if Trump is defeated in a big way, and Trumpism is defeated in a big way, I think it could shatter the cult. On the other hand, if they manage to kind of weasel through it, it's sort of like, in the 1920s we had a not entirely analogous situation, but Teddy Roosevelt, prior to the 1920s, had been a progressive Republican president, and Taft followed him and continued, breaking up Standard Oil and all those things. In fact, the final breakup happened during his presidency. And then came the conservative Republicans, and Harding in 1920 campaigned on dropping the top tax rate from 75% down to 25%, which he did when he was elected in 1920, and on a slogan of more business in government, less government in business. In other words, privatize and deregulate. And they did that aggressively. And it goosed the economy like nobody's business, which is why we had it called it the Roaring '20s, which, by the way, is the exact same thing that's happening right now. And it set up the inevitable crash of October of 1929. That crash was so severe and so deep and so long that it woke people up to the Republican con game. And it was 3 generations before the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives again. I mean, they just wandered in the wilderness forever until in the 1970s, Lewis Powell came up with his memo and they organized all the rich people and figured out how to bring in the Christians and how to bring in the bigots and how to, I mean, they just basically, the gun guys, the anti-abortion people, they put together this coalition. But it's not entirely analogous, but people did wake up from that conservative cult then. It may happen again, but Chris, I'm making no major predictions here. I mean, it's just... That's
one of my major concerns, is that we get sort of an unsatisfying, lukewarm resolution to this, and that there aren't any serious consequences, and it just kind of lurches forward again, and then we set ourselves up.
The thing that concerns me the most, the way that Bolsonaro and the right took over Brazil, as Mark Weisbrot was telling us, was they stacked the courts with a bunch of their right-wing buddies. And during the last few years of the Obama administration, Mitch McConnell refused to fill federal judgeships, to the point that John Roberts issued sent a letter to Mitch McConnell and made it public, saying that there was a judicial crisis because there were not enough judges and the courts were all backed up. And this was like a year before Obama left office. And Mitch McConnell just completely ignored it, and also, kept Merrick Garland off the bench. And right now, he is packing the courts, and he's packing them with the kind of people who I think would support fascism in the United States. That's something that really concerns me in a big way, that if the courts in the United States are used the same way that Bolsonaro and the right wing used them in Brazil to imprison the left, I mean, literally putting the ex-president in jail. And here you've got Trump chanting, "Lock her up," about Hillary Clinton. If that happens, then the game has turned really, really dark, really, really evil. And we're just going to have to wait and see and do everything we can to